Today we are ranking anime logos from S tier to D tier. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. I've got the 100 Thieves AOT hoodie on to celebrate the moment, and I picked out a few of my favorite shows as well as some recommendations from followers. Logos like these can't really be accurately ranked because all these shows have their own charm. Some of that charm is to have horrible design, right? Like questionable design choices, but I'm gonna give my opinion. We'll get through it and we're gonna try anyways. With that out of the way, let's get into the list. Starting off with the Attack on Titan logo, because I'm wearing the Attack on Titan 100 Thieves hoodie. I was able to use this for the collaboration and a lot of the marketing, the designs, and it was surprisingly easy to use. I don't think it's a bad logo by any means. The gradient throws me off a little bit. When I was creating designs using this logo, I mostly had to make the logo white or black. So for example, this was like one of the banners that I made for our Twitter. So you can see when it's fully white, it works. So I think that kind of sways my opinion to put it more in A tier. I think I would probably put it in A tier. It's legible. There's a couple things I would change based on me needing to use it for design stuff. But as a logo, I think it works. Up next, the Hunter x Hunter logo. I just finished this show recently. The logo is surprisingly balanced. I know it's really hard for logos that have repeated names. It's hard to design around it because it feels too symmetrical. So I like how they used asymmetry for the design. I think it's super legible, especially from a distance. So it's gonna be very recognizable. I think the colors work. Orange and green, really good contrast, so the color works well and it's functional. So I would probably put the Hunter x Hunter logo in A tier as well. The Demon Slayer logo, this one is tough. I think the design is interesting. Obviously this is the English version. It wasn't intended to look this way. My biggest issue is when it gets zoomed out, because the type is outside of that border, it gets a little bit hard to read. So the logo itself is fairly unbalanced. The type is cool. Honestly, I think if the type was by itself, it might even be a stronger logo. The type below it seems kind of like an afterthought. There are some functional issues to it. It's definitely memorable, but I think all of these logos are memorable. So as a mark, I would maybe put it in B or C tier. Looking at the Haikyu logo, I have the first of two variations showing the original and the English version because I felt like they were different enough to compare. I'm actually a big fan of the original version of the logo. It feels super bold, heavy. It's got energy to it, right? I just like the way the characters interact with each other. The English version is a little bit more questionable for me. I think the volleyball for the eye is kind of corny, and it doesn't seem like the direction of the original logo, which is supposed to be like intense, bold, sporty. For the English version of the Haikyu logo, I would probably tie it up either in B or C tier, but that volleyball to me it's a little unusual. We'll leave it here. We'll say C tier, original version, probably A tier. Looking at the Mob Psycho logo, I'm a sucker for Mob Psycho. Mob Psycho is my favorite show. I love the aesthetic, the design, the art style, and I really like the logo. And I wanted to show the season 2 example. I think the yellow and blue is really nice contrast. I think I like the Japanese type much more, but I still really enjoy the original Mob Psycho in English. This might just be because I'm a sucker for the show, but I would give Mob Psycho my first S tier. One of my favorite logos. The way they use it is just so iconic to me. This one's gonna be so weird, but looking at the One Piece logo, this is stuck in my mind for the design, because if you watch One Piece, like, it's a goofy show, but this logo, in my eyes, is undoubtedly, it's hideous, right? It's an old logo. It was made a really long time ago, before logo design was really as developed as it was now, but it's really goofy. Some people might say that's a good thing because it kind of matches the aesthetic of the show. The type has always pissed me off. because of how unbalanced it is with the weight and the contrast. And like this goofy, look at this dude. What is that? You know? Respectfully, monkey D tier. Moving into the Jujutsu Kaisen logo. This is another comparison, a side-by-side for the original and the English version. I really like the original. I think the original feels mysterious, it's ominous, the way the brushstrokes kind of just like float down. The English version, obviously it's kind of harder to translate, but the English version kind of takes that away, which is unfortunate, but like I said at the beginning, we're trying to rank the English versions just because I don't know how legible the Japanese type is. Like, I can't be a good judge. I'll probably put it in B tier, and I'll say the original version is probably A tier. I think the original has a really nice aesthetic to it. Looking at the Naruto and the Boruto logo, obviously, same series, right? But if we're looking at the Naruto logo, it's always thrown me off having these sideways gradients. It screams to me like default Illustrator gradient on type. And I think they know that, right? Because when they updated the show for Boruto, which is like a modernized version of Naruto, they fixed it. They made the gradient a smooth line that goes vertically rather than horizontally. So they knew that that was a visual kind of like flaw. I mean, this is coming from someone, I've watched Naruto twice. I love the show. I grew up on this show. But the logo itself is always something that has thrown me off about it. So we'll say as a logo, not considering the show itself or whatever, I would probably say the Naruto logo is a C tier logo to me. The Boruto logo is slightly better. I'd probably put it in B tier. And that has nothing to do with like the quality of the shows. Moving into the Pokemon logo, again, grew up on this show, big fan. But here's what's really amazing. How old is this logo? And it still stands today. It's still used in the same way. It looks great in basically every scenario. I mean, Pokemon is a giant brand, and this logo works for whatever they need it to. It has stood the test of time. The colors work. The shapes, I think, are balanced. This logo was ahead of its time, 100%. The Pokemon logo, it's become so iconic. I don't think there's anything I would change or redesign for it. And hopefully y'all agree with me, but I would say Pokemon is an S tier logo. But let's talk about the My Hero Academia logo. Personally, I'm a fan. I like the industrial look. Like when I see it used in poster designs and used in the context of the show, to me it works. I think it's legible as far as I can tell. The color's nice, the bright yellow and red again adds to that like industrial look. I'm leaning more towards B tier, maybe I would put it in between. But we'll say B tier just to give it a spot. But let's talk about the Dragon Ball Z logo. I've been watching this show since it was on VHS. I think the logo now is a little bit dated. The typography feels a little bit tense to me. In some examples, like with the Haikyu logo, making like the volleyball the eye can feel corny. But I think for Dragon Ball Z, it fits. The style of the logo also feels a little bit bouncier and more playful than Dragon Ball Z, which is about like fighting and action. And it's a little bit cluttered. There are some things I like, some things I don't like. I think the colors work, so I would probably put it in B tier. Looking at the Soul Eater logo, I'm a big fan of Soul Eater. I really like Fire Force. The aesthetic, the style, to me is really, really iconic. I enjoy the Soul Eater logo quite a bit. Maybe it's hard to read. In my eyes, it's still fairly legible. Yeah, it kind of looks like Dignitas, if any of y'all are into esports. There's a little bit too much going on, but I think the incorporation of the mascot is cool. I would probably put Soul Eater in B tier. Looking at the Death Note logo, when I think of Death Note, I actually think of the logo to the right. To me, I feel like this logo on the right, which is taken from the notebook, I think this is a better designed logo. So this was a weird one for me because I actually don't really like the actual logo very much at all. It feels a little bit confusing, and I think that the typography on the top and the bottom having like this weird oval shape, like this skinny oval below everything, just doesn't really fit. I would probably put this in D tier. And the notebook logo, I would put in S tier, honestly. You can see the T's aren't the same. You can tell this isn't just a font, right? because the E's are different, the T's are different. It feels very custom. And I really like that about this version, even though it's not the official logo. Looking at the Peppa Pig logo, this was suggested by a follower. If we're being honest, Peppa Pig, maybe one of the most iconic anime of all time. The tail at the end of the G, it's subtle, but like it works. You can see it. Like it's not a bad logo at all. So I'm gonna put Peppa Pig for S tier, one of the most iconic anime logos of all time. Hey, I already know how y'all feel about this one. So looking at the Akira logo, this is an iconic logo. Even beyond anime, I cannot tell you how many times as a graphic designer I've seen this in mood boards. It has a lot of personality, a lot of character to it. And again, I think because it has affected the design world, I would put the Akira logo probably in S tier, right next to Peppa Pig for most iconic anime logos of all time. Moving into the Yu-Gi-Oh logo. Yu-Gi-Oh, probably my favorite show as a kid. I love the card game. I initially thought it was going to be outdated. The design actually holds up pretty well. So I think the red makes this type, which is normally I would say the English type, there's a lot of detail going on, but something about it being against this red background, it's actually fairly functional. And I think because Yu-Gi-Oh, it's not a whole lot of text, this works at a small scale. Like I can zoom out pretty far and I can still read it. So I'm gonna put Yu-Gi-Oh in A tier. Looking at the Evangelion as our last logo, from what I've been seeing in the chat, this logo is basically either S tier or F tier and like nothing in between. And given that I have no context of the show itself, but I do know the aesthetic, and I know similar to the Akira logo, I know that this aesthetic is very iconic. If you like kind of this cyberpunk design, you probably really like this logo. Functionally, it's got a lot of problems. It's pretty hard to read. There's a lot of detail going on. If this was based on my personal opinion, I would probably put it in A tier. I know a lot of people would disagree with me on that, but as a designer, I love this look. And if you think it's a D tier logo, I also respect that. If you're watching this on YouTube, this was streamed live on twitch.tv/NowackDesign. Thank you all for watching. Hope to see you in the next video.